Um, just a quick video for y'all. This is part 3 of development, and or day 7 in our notes. So let's look at what we have planned today. So we are going to see kind of questions you need to do for this week is where do you, as an individual, not a not a family unit or just you, get your energy from? Not what powers your car or this or that, just you in general. And then how do you use up your energy? What do you do? And be specific. So I want at least 3 examples for this one. So, how do you use up your energy? 3 examples, then you'll be good. So, today for development, energy. Energy is super important for how we view how developed the country is, how we use our energy, where do we get our energy from. And so you should be able to summarize the different types of energy and how countries use them. Your totally useless bit of information for the day is that you can swim through a blue whale's heart. That's scary to me. Like, that is just like, that's a massive thing. If I, Mr. Stewart, can get through this thing and it's like not get stuck. And then it gives you Jonah the whale, like, new perspective. It's like, oh, that's massive. But energy, different types of energy, good types of energy, bad types of energy, but energy is energy. So, first, we're going to talk about energy demand. And just so most energy that we get is raw materials. So, this is a basic thing that we make a thing out of, a better product. So, for instance, coal for the most part heats up most of the houses in America. Petroleum or gas. Petroleum is a very important thing. And then also natural gas. So if you have a gas stove at home, that is natural gas that you are pumping in to catch on fire to cook you something. So that is something that you need as well. So these are all kind of basic things. These are also not renewable. These are from dead things millions, thousands of years ago. And so there is a demand for energy. If you think about it, we need energy. As Americans, like, I need energy to make sure I have this. I need energy to make this video. I need energy to like drive to my parents' house so I can make this video. All of this is just like, oh, okay. Um, Also, what you're watching this on needs energy. Where do we get that energy? How do we get it? Who do we buy it from? So, this is developed countries consume half of all energy. And my question is why? Why do developed countries consume half of the energy and the less developed countries don't? Why is there an inequality? So for this, look at the why. So look at the why here. Okay, so why businesses, homes, and transportation in developed countries get more energy than others. Also, there's inequality. So most demand is from the more developed countries, but the less developed countries own all the countries or all the reserves of natural gas, all this stuff. America's kind of a exception to the rule because we do have natural gas, oil, coal, all of that just stockpiled. And if you know now, as of the recording of 421, 2020, during all this Corona stuff, we're not driving as much, and that's hurting the energy sector a whole lot because um, I was just thinking, it's like usually I fill up twice a week. I haven't filled up in 3 weeks. And that's with like very minimal driving, all this. So it's hurting everyone. And it's like right now the like price of oil for the future is negative. It's below zero. So it's just crazy to think it's like, oh wow. Like there's not people using because we're all staying at home for the most part. Um, but the distribution is not equal across low developed countries. And this causes instability. And so if you do not have resources, you can't sell them, which means people aren't going to look at you the same as, say, a less developed country who has a lot of natural goods. So this is our oil consumption around the world. U.S. being high up there, total North Americans. We make up 5%, 7%, China, all this stuff, and it's just like we have so many barrels of oil that we use per day. And so, what are some ways energy directly affects the global economy? So, how does it affect the globe? Like, we get rich and poor off of oil, and that's just the world we live in now. And so, why? Why is that the case? That when energy like prices go down drastically, it hurts the world economy. Why? So, let us keep going. So for instance, energy supply. So coal, um, United States, China. We have a lot of coal in our country, and so coal usually comes from plants. Petroleum or gas, as we call it, like oil, that is usually from ocean sides, and so you'll see Saudi Arabia, Russia has a lot of this. And then natural gas from the ocean sides as well, like from the coast as well as inland. You see natural gas from Russia, U.S., and these are just examples. For instance, the U.S. could easily go under petroleum because as Texans, we know that we have oil in the western part of our state. And then also natural gas. We have natural gas here in Texas, like right here in the DFW area. It's the Barrett Shale. That is what we're on currently, and so we're like sitting on natural gas. And then also, you might have heard of this, but there's fracking going on in Pennsylvania, some in Texas, and it's just a more efficient way to get natural gas out of the ground without doing the whole thing. So there are developments in this, and we're learning that there might be some bad sides to fracking, but there's also good sides as well. Um, but the thing is, our demand is outpacing our supply. So we are using more resource, more energy than we can produce. And so we're just kind of like, well, how do we solve this? Today in 2020, on April 21st, not so much. We are actually overproducing because we're not using as much energy. And so these are renewable energy. So you have hydropower, solar power, biomass engineering, which if you've ever seen an ExxonMobil commercial and they're like, we're trying to use algae into fuel, and it's like, that's biomass. Geothermal energy, so heat, and then there's non-renewable, coal, natural gas, fossil fuel, and then nuclear. Nuclear is essentially, or it is non-renewable, but it's essentially renewable energy of how it is. I'm a big proponent of nuclear energy, so discuss. Although fossil fuels are cheaper, what are some ways alternative energy could benefit developing countries? And so this is something I want you to look at. And so, um, what are some ways we can use alternative instead of fossil fuels? And how can that help developing countries? Not developed, developing. And so the question to be had is, why do more developed countries control less developed countries in this like energy production? And so first is neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is like, hey, these developed countries profited off of colonialism, and now we're using that early head start to exploit the lesser countries. And so this is to use economic, political, and cultural influences over lower developed countries. And then there's economic development. So low income nations just like will eventually grow into more modern industries and more modern economies, but it's going to take time. And sometimes more developed countries kind of curb that because of dependency. And we're going to talk about the dependency a little later, maybe next slide. Nope, not next slide. But there's fair trade. Fair trade helps boost developing countries by protecting workers so they're not being exploited. And so when more people get better wages, that's where you can go out and buy stuff and you can stimulate the economy and all that. And that's good. And so fair trade, you'll usually see this with like some clothes, coffee, like food stuff where like this is fair trade. So this is making sure that we have a fair economic trade with these developing countries to help them develop faster. And so then there's money for development. So these developing countries can get loans from the World Bank or from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to help stabilize their economies or even help develop them with infrastructure. So we've talked about infrastructures like, hey, having a nice paved road is better for your car than driving on a rocky dirt road. So there's this, that, and the other that these two organizations can help. But most of these projects fail, sadly. Partly is because faulty engineering, countries like the leaders and the government misuse the funds or just flat out steal it. New infrastructure does not attract other investments, and all countries and this like means all countries are in a lot of debt because they still owe this back and they're just holding on to this cash and it's like, oh, I still owe you money and I'm needing to use this. Then there's the dependency theory, which we talked about last week, but the reason why developing countries are so poor is just because the more developed countries are exploiting them for cheap labor, for cheap raw materials, all that. And then there's the Brant line, which again like separates the rich north and Australia, New Zealand, with the southern half, which is the poor side. Then there's alternative energies, and we're going to talk about that. So, one, nuclear energy, little material, but a lot of energy. It can be super dangerous if you've seen Chernobyl or I think it's 7 or 5 Mile Island in Japan, or the Fukushima plant. These power plants can get really bad. For instance, in Chernobyl has just gotten stuff kind of settled, and then when we settled everything in Chernobyl, Ukraine, forest fire comes out and it's like about to hit the kind of shelter that was put in place. But really, there's not a whole lot of dangerous side effects to nuclear energy. And so I'm a big proponent of it. Like I'd be okay with having a nuclear power plant in Texas or something like that just to help develop a whole lot of energy. And so there's a video explaining nuclear energy. Not going to play that for obvious reasons. And then this kind of shows the number of nuclear power plants and where they are in relation to plate tectonics, which the Fukushima plant, the earthquake that was like, if you see right here, this is where it happened. It's on two fault lines. And so that really hurt the country and it caused all this horrible like area. And also, if you see the little red lines, you're like, oh, these are not good at all. not put nuclear power plants on fault lines or earthquake prone zones. And so, watch that video and I will post the link. But what should we do with radioactive waste? And is the manufacture and stockpiling of nuclear weapons necessary, and why? So answer these two questions. Renewable energy, hydroelectric power. This is just using the river to generate like a whole bunch of energy, which I'm kind of also for because you're not doing anything except for using gravity to power turbines in the hydroelectric power that develops energy. And then there's biofuel. And so this is just using fuel from like wood, crops, garbage, landfill gas, alcohol use, all of that. So you might have seen if I think I'm trying to think, Racetrack does a lot of this, but if you see the word ethanol, ethanol is corn. And so ethanol has some corn gas in it to help it be more environmental friendly, all this. And then people are using different ways to actually make fuel. Wind power, energy from movement of air. I'm not a huge proponent of this, even though if you go out to West Texas, you see all of these wind turbines, especially like if you go to Lubbock and stuff. I just think they're ugly, they break down, and they don't give you as much energy, and the cost of keeping them is just not great. Solar energy, I like solar energy because again, you're just using the sun, and it's just like okay, it's warm. But the thing is, the solar panels or the solar cells, these little black things that collect the energy, they're super expensive. And say, like here in Texas, it hails sometimes. And so if it hails and it hits those, that just knocks it out. And then that's really expensive to replace. And then also, with technology, the more we use something, the better, the more money something gets, the better we can make a better product. But as of right now, we need better batteries to like to store the solar power because sometimes it just is not great. And so there is a huge push to get solar panel in Africa because Africa is kind of one of the sunniest places on Earth, and it's gotten even into where the rapper slash hip hop artist Akon, who is from Africa, said, "Hey, I'm going to pay for all of these solar panels to be installed," and so that's going on like now. But there's sustainable development that needs to happen for these countries, and this is a little off the beaten path, but sustainable development. So this is conducted without depletion of natural resources. So that's like not sucking up all the oil or excuse me, not sucking up all the oil or this or that. But you need a healthy thing. So you need to have a good economy. You need to have a good, healthy environment, and then also a good social community. Which right now, the economy is not doing so well. Social community is not doing so well. Environment's doing really well, like where the world is kind of healing itself because we're not using as much as we used to because of all the corona stuff. But before this, the economy and the environment were doing fairly well, but our still social community was not doing well in America. And the thing is, to have like really good sustainable development, you need to have all three. You need to have people being likable towards each other, not trying to hurt each other, not trying to kill each other. You need to have a good economy. You need to have a good environment. And usually, having a good economy and a good environment helps social community just because when you got money in your pocket and it's nice outside and it's not like forest fires or depletion of forests or just oil derricks all over the place. It's just nice outside. You can go walk in the park, all this. That usually makes social community a whole lot better. But because we live in kind of a toxic climate, it doesn't matter that our economy was doing well or our environment was doing well as well. It just if you don't believe in what I believe, so that was hurting our development as a United States because we're not gonna just stay stagnant with our development. We always want to keep on developing. And so the summary is identify the main sources of energy. And so I need you to write a little summary about identify the main sources and then discuss the relationship between energy and development. So those two things are important, and we're done. The next day was going to be a quiz, which I might put up. But yeah, we're done with development. We're going on to the next um, PowerPoint after this. Next week I'll have a energy kind of packet for you to look at, and then I'll let you kind of pick and choose some of those and see which ones are worth developing or not. So, but if you need any help, you know where to get, like, where to contact me. So, hope you all have a great day. Bye.